Uh, my name is Harry Crouch. I'm the director of the California Men's Centers and the president of the National Coalition of Free Men. The National Coalition of Free Men is the oldest men's rights organization on the planet. It was established in 1977, and we have members in every state and several countries. I'd like to share with you today a story about what happened recently to one of the people that I worked with in California. One of our military members, a superstar in the military, actually a hero, a man who was a graduate of a military academy, went on to get a master's degree in a related field, and spent the last 18 years dedicating his life to our country and his family. We, in the United States of America, have invested largely in this man and his family. We paid for his education, we paid his salary, we've supported his wife, his children, we've fed them, we provided medical benefits. We've done all the things that we're supposed to do with respect to this wonderful man and his family. The last time he came off a tour of duty, he found out that his wife had been having an affair with another military person for the last 2 years. Obviously, he was very disheartened about this, particularly for his two daughters, who I've met, and they're just lovely, wonderful little kids. And the thing got very messy pretty quick when he found out about the affair and confronted her about it. In retaliation, she filed a false claim of rape against him. Through a series of events, it was soon discovered that not only was the charge false, but that she and her lover had conspired with respect to the false accusation. So what were the consequences? If you really think through it, this career military person who was in line for his first major command and would have been responsible for billions of dollars worth of equipment and thousands of troops, was denied his command. He was put on desk duty, commanding nobody. Had the false accusation been true, or even stuck, which it did not, he would have lost his security clearance and his career would have been over. And even with the false accusation, his career is pretty much over anyway. Went in his jacket and he didn't get his command. Nothing happened to the wife for making the false accusation. The other military man that was involved in the affair, also a career military person, almost ready to retire, was fined $1,500, even though by military law he should have been court-martialed and mustered out of the military service, which he was not. There's some difficulty there, obviously, because he too might have been a very good military person. The point here being that something we'd seldom think about in terms of our military personnel who are at life and limb in Iraq and Afghanistan and other parts of the world, that from a taxpayer position we invest considerable sums of money in them to train them to do their job so they can protect us, and we try to protect them in the best way we possibly can. And this story is about a man who went to war. Iraq war couldn't bring him down. Afghanistan couldn't bring him down. The Gulf War couldn't bring him down. But one woman, one adulterous woman, with a false accusation of rape, brought down this wonderful man and a part of our U.S. military. One woman, one false accusation, and she received not one sanction of any type. We seldom think through that in those terms, but if we do, I think the only word that describes it is incredulous, and that may be too soft. There's no way we should allow such a thing, and yet we do, primarily because of legislation often known as the Violence Against Women Act. And the people that drive the legislation like the Violence Against Women Act.
Which does what?
I'm not going to go into too much detail on the Violence Against Women Act, but the Violence Against Women Act basically was a Clinton piece of legislation, Bill Clinton piece of legislation, signed in 1996. It delivers about $1 billion a year into the various economies throughout the United States for a number of various programs. Domestic violence shelters, domestic violence coalitions, programs on child abuse, all sorts of things that sound very laudatory, but in fact, when you look at them, are very destructive. In my experience, programs funded under the Violence Against Women Act do substantially more harm than they do good. It's really not even debatable from my perspective. The programs under the Violence Against Women Act actually cause death. And they won't even talk about that. I'll give you an example. Male suicide rates are 4 times higher than they are female suicide rates. And when I'm talking to people within the domestic violence industry, and they say to me, yes, but look at all the women that are murdered in domestic violence situations and how few men are murdered in domestic violence situations. Well, that's a ruse. You know, year after year after year, if you look at the data within the United States of America on people who've been murdered in domestic violence situations, what you really find, there's about 1,400 women that are murdered from all violent forms of, or from all forms of violence, not just domestic violence. There's about 830, 840 men each year that die primarily from domestic violence situations. But with suicide rates 4 times as high, my response to those sort of questions or queries or statements are that if you want to find dead male victims of domestic violence, look in the cemetery under suicide, because men when they get burdened and stressed out and depressed and overwhelmed, maybe like our hero in the military who had the strength to overcome. A lot of people don't have that strength. When the system has stripped them of everything that means anything to them, their money, their children, their job, their house, everything, it's simply easier for many to take a 357 and put it in their head and blow their brains out rather than start over again paying owners amounts of child support to a woman that may be having an affair with somebody else. So there's lots of reasons. It's very, very complex, but one of the most disconcerting things about the Violence Against Women Act is it promotes money for what are called STOP grants. And the STOP grant money is used for judicial training, to train judges, to train psychologists, mediators, police departments, things like that. And the philosophy behind the Violence Against Women Act, which is really, when you examine it, not based on facts at all when it comes to domestic violence, has spread not only throughout the United States, but through initiatives like President Bush's Family Justice program, Family Justice Center programs, and also through private foundations like the Ford Foundation, predominantly, the Mary Kay Foundation. Foundations like that have provided money to the movement, which is now exporting these programs to Europe, North Africa, other places throughout the world, or certainly New Zealand, Australia, the UK, where more and more heinous laws are being passed almost daily, which lead to the destruction of the natural biological family, which is part of the agenda, by the way, the destruction of the family. It's not the protection of the family, it's the destruction of the family. That's what causes the industry to grow. I mean, the industry needs victims to keep sustaining itself. And when it starts running out of victims, it needs to create victims. They do that by expanding the definition of domestic violence, child abuse, elder abuse, pet abuse, whatever abuse comes along that can provide funding for a particular program. I've never seen any of these. There's no evidence anywhere on the face of the planet, none, zero, zip, nada, for instance, the domestic violence programs, battery intervention programs work. There's none. There's quite a bit of evidence, scientific research, that demonstrates, in fact, that domestic violence battery intervention programs have an adverse effect and can actually cause more disruption in the family. I could talk about that and explain it, but that's probably for another day.